For 2 years, we followed the events of the Egghead Island Arc unfold chapter by chapter, and somehow it still feels like we are processing everything that was revealed during this story arc. The Egghead Island Arc signaled us entering the final saga of One Piece, after Wano's explosive conclusion which had crowned Luffy as a Yonko. We expected a bit of a breather, maybe some light-hearted adventure before the next big confrontation, but instead Oda looked at us and said absolutely not, before he dropped one of the biggest story arcs within all of the series. Egghead gave us the death of the world's smartest man, 5 demonic immortals descending from heaven, and the complete rewriting of history through a worldwide broadcast, and confirmation that the entire planet is literally drowning. The Egghead Island Arc wasn't about Luffy liberating a country or defeating a tyrant, this was about information warfare. So in this retrospective video, we're going to be diving into every critical moment of this story arc, the genius setup of Vegapunk's 6 satellites, the soul-crushing tragedy of Bartholomew Kuma's life, the unprecedented appearance of all of the Gorosei in their true demonic forms, and the broadcast that had changed everything about the One Piece world, and why the consequences of this arc will echo through every remaining chapter of One Piece until the series ends. So we start with the Straw Hats sailing away from Wano with new bounties that had sent shockwaves across the world. Luffy at 3 billion berries, Zoro and Jinbei over 1 billion each, but the bounties were just the beginning of the chaos. Cobra was dead, Vivi had vanished, and Sabo, the Revolutionary Army's second in command, stood accused of murdering one of the most beloved kings in the world. The Straw Hats learned this sailing away from Wano, and Luffy immediately wanted to rush off and rescue Vivi, but Zoro stopped him with words that actually had made sense. They needed to trust that Vivi could handle herself until there was concrete proof that she needed saving. During this conversation, Luffy finally revealed his true dream to his crew, the thing that he'd told Ace and Sabo as kids, the same dream Roger had shared with Whitebeard and Oden. We still don't know what it is exactly, but the crew's reactions ranged from Usopp calling it impossible to Sanji saying Luffy needed his brain checked, yet they all smiled and laughed because that's what it means to follow Luffy, someone who is chasing a dream so ridiculous that it might just be achievable. Meanwhile, some reshuffling had occurred to the power structure of the pirate world. Buggy somehow became an emperor alongside Luffy, despite everyone knowing that he's a fraud. How did this happen? Well, because Crocodile and Mihawk formed Cross Guild, with Buggy serving as their figurehead and the world government mistakenly crediting him as the leader of the organization. The interesting thing is that Cross Guild has now placed bounties upon the heads of Marines. Vice Admirals were worth hundreds of millions of berry, Admirals were worth over 3 billion, and Fleet Admiral Sakazuki, his head was valued at 5 billion berries. Now, the biggest reveal wasn't about pirates or marines, it was about what had unfolded during the Reverie, the meeting of world leaders that occurs every 4 years at Mary Geoise. Sabo had been there leading a Revolutionary Army operation, but the truth about Cobra's death was a bit more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Sabo's mission wasn't complicated, it was to declare war against the Celestial Dragons by burning their flag, destroying Mary Geoise's food supply in order to starve them into submission and rescue Kuma from slavery. The Revolutionary Army commanders, Karasu with his Suit fruit, Lindbergh with his weapons, and Morley with his push fruit, they freed as many slaves as possible while keeping Admirals Fujitora and Ryukugyu occupied. During all of the chaos, Sabo encountered Jewelry Bonnie. They both had the same goal of saving Kuma, so they briefly teamed up. Sabo handed off the slave collar keys to Karasu and told him to retreat once all the slaves were freed. Bonnie eventually split off toward Egghead while Sabo headed for a different destination. Then came the moment that had changed everything. Cobra requested a meeting with the Gorosei. He discovered something in Alabaster's ancient records. It was information about his ancestor Nefertari Lily, who was one of the original nobles who had founded the world government over 800 years ago. Lily was supposed to become a celestial dragon, but she refused and returned to Alabaster, except she never made it back home. She She vanished without a trace at Mary Geoise, and Cobra had wanted answers as to what had happened to his ancestor. The 5 elders gave him some answers, just not the ones that he was expecting. Imu had then suddenly materialized in the empty throne room. As all of you know, the chair that Imu was sat upon was supposed to remain vacant as a symbol that no single person rules the world, except there has been someone who has sat upon this empty throne for over 800 years. When Imu had revealed themselves to Cobra, everything had started to make sense. Imu was Nerona Imu, one of the original 20 kings who'd somehow achieved immortality, possibly through the Opi Opi no Mi's ultimate surgery, some have theorized. Cobra showed Imu a letter passed down through Alabaster's royal family. It's a letter from Lily herself, revealing her full name to be Nefertari D. Lily. She was a part of the D clan, the ancient enemies of the world government. The letter had suggested that scattering the pornoglyphs across the world wasn't done by accident. It was a deliberate sabotage from within. Imu explained that the D clan represents everyone who opposes the world government. They're descendants of the ancient kingdom that Joy Boy had come from, the people the world government had tried to erase during the Void Century. Lily's supposed mistake with the pornoglyphs being scattered was the reason that the truth about the Void Century could still be discovered. The moment Cobra confirmed Lily's full name, his fate was sealed. Imu sent a dark arrow through his chest. Sabo, who'd been eavesdropping, burst into the room and had attacked. But Imu and the 5 elders transformed. Imu became a dark, shapeless monster that could consume fire. The 5 elders each took demonic forms, massive yokai creatures that appeared to be more ancient than the devil fruits themselves. Sabo grabbed the wounded Cobra and began running. Cobra, knowing that he was dying, used his last moments to tell Sabo a message. Inform Luffy and Vivi that they carry the name of D. Then suddenly Imu's arrow pierced him again, bypassing Sabo's Logia intangibility somehow. Cobra stood his ground, buying Sabo time to escape, and he recited the final words from Lily's letter: "Bear the flag of the dawn in the face of the sinking world." Then they ended up killing Cobra. The 5 elders murdered him right there in the throne room while Sabo watched helplessly. But 2 other people witnessed this scene. Wapol, the cowardly ruler of the Drum Kingdom, who had been sneaking through Mary Geoise using his munch munch fruit to eat through walls. He saw everything through a hole and immediately fled for his life. And Cobra's daughter Vivi was also a witness, but she had been captured by CP0 agents who told her she had become a celestial dragon's pet. Wapol burst through the wall where Vivi was being held. She jumped into his mouth and without hesitation, using him as an escape pod. Together, they fled Mary Geoise and eventually made contact with Big News Morgans, who agreed to hide them in exchange for the scoop about what Wapol had witnessed. The world government pinned Cobra's murder on Sabo. They broadcast to the world that the Revolutionary Army's second-in-command had assassinated a beloved king, turning public opinion against the revolutionaries, while at the same time hiding the truth about the existence of Imu. After Sabo escaped Mary Geoise, he contacted Dragon and Ivankov to report what had happened. During that call, he was on a ship near the Luluzia Kingdom, one of 8 kingdoms that had just revolted against the world government, and that's when the sky had opened up. A massive shadow appeared above Luluzia. Imu was watching from Mary Geoise after having decided to test their new weapon called the Mother Flame. This was Vegapunk's attempt to recreate the ancient energy source that had powered the lost ancient civilization. York had stolen a fragment of the Mother Flame and had given it to the Gorosei, who used it to power an ancient weapon which is almost certainly Uranus. Beams of light fell from the sky and obliterated Luluzia completely. The island didn't just sink, it was erased from existence. A hole appeared in the ocean where Luluzia used to exist. It was so massive that it caused a global earthquake and it raised sea levels by 1 meter across the entire planet. Islands that were barely above water suddenly flooded. Coastal cities were evacuated, and nobody except Imu knew why this had happened. Sabo survived by sheer luck. He'd been calling from a ship offshore, not on the island itself, but he watched an entire kingdom and all of its people vanish within seconds. The world government declared officially that Luluzia never existed. They erased it from maps, from records, from history, just like they'd done to the ancient kingdom 800 years ago. The revolutionaries now understood the stakes. The weapon that drowned the world during the Void Century was active once again, and the world government was willing to use it. While the Reverie chaos was unfolding, the three supernovas who had left Wano, Luffy, Law, and Kid each headed in their different directions. Their fates would be vastly different. Law and the Heart Pirates sailed for Winter Island, one of 3 potential destinations that you can go to after Wano. They never made it there though. Blackbeard ambushed them, having specifically targeted one of the 3 crews, hoping to steal their road poneglyph. The battle perfectly demonstrated why Blackbeard is a Yonko. His crew's new devil fruits made them terrifying. Van Ogre had the Wop Wop fruit, letting him teleport. Doc Q had the Sick Sick fruit, transmitting diseases, and Burgess wielded the Strength fruit, multiplying his already massive power. Law fought brilliantly. He used his room abilities strategically, capitalizing upon openings, and he matched Blackbeard's aggression with precise technique. But Blackbeard's Darkness fruit nullified Law's powers whenever they had made contact, and the numbers game eventually overwhelmed him as Law was defeated. His crew would have died there, but Beppo saved them. Using a drug that Chopper had developed during their time in Wano, Beppo forced his Sulong transformation and carried Law away through the ocean. The Heart Pirates escaped with their lives, but Blackbeard claimed their road poneglyph robbings, and overall Law's crew was defeated, but they had escaped. Kid's fate was far worse. The Kid Pirates arrived at Elbaf, where Shanks and the giant warrior pirates Dory and Broggy reunited after their century-long battle at Little Garden. Kid, feeling full of himself by defeating Big Mom, decided to attack Shanks' allied fleet. Using his future sight observation haki, Shanks witnessed a vision. Kid's damned punk railgun attack would devastate the allied ships, killing everyone aboard. Shanks moved before Kid could fire, and with a single strike of divine departure, the same technique Roger used, Shanks destroyed Kid's railgun and knocked out both Kid and Killer simultaneously. The remaining Kid Pirates, those who'd withstood Shanks' burst of Conqueror's haki, immediately surrendered. They offered their road poneglyph robbings in exchange for mercy. Shanks took them, then stepped off of the Victoria Punk, and Dory and Broggy unleashed their combined attack as Hakoku split Kid's ship completely in half. We learned that the fate of the Kid Pirates is that they were completely annihilated. The entire crew sank into the sea. It seems like after having survived Wano and challenging an emperor, Kid's dreams supposedly died at Elbaf. Of the 3 supernovas that left Wano with identical ambitions, one had his crew annihilated, one lost his road poneglyphs, and one continued sailing towards answers about the true history of the world. At the same time as all of these events were occurring, something unprecedented happened at the Marine headquarters. Garp had gone rogue. Kobe had been captured by Blackbeard after the Amazon Lily incident. The young Marine, the one Garp had personally trained, was being held hostage at Hachinozu, the island stronghold for the Blackbeard pirates. Fleet Admiral Sakazuki ordered the Marines to stand down. Kobe was a member of SWORD, the Marines' secret division that operated independently without official oversight. That meant that the Marines could disavow responsibility for SWORD members' actions, and incidentally, Kobe was officially expendable. But Garp disagreed violently. He commandeered a Marine battleship from G14 base, and he assembled a team of Helmeppo, Kobe's best friend, Prince Grus, the young Rear Admiral with the Clay fruit, Kujaku, Suru's granddaughter who wielded the Whip fruit, Hibari who had the GP flower ability, and Tashigi. Together they launched an assault on Hachinozu itself. Garp's arrival was spectacular. His ship launched into the air using a coup de burst style technique, and he crashed into the center of Hachinozu's pirate district. Garp emerged and unleashed Galaxy Impact, a single powerful punch so strong that it demolished entire city blocks and knocked out hundreds of pirates at the same time. He wasn't just rescuing Kobe, he was sending a clear message to the Blackbeard pirates. But Blackbeard's commanders weren't weak. Avalo Pizarro ate the island fruit, letting him control Hachinozu's terrain itself. Vasco Shot ate the Glug Glug fruit, manipulating alcohol into explosive projectiles. And San Juan Wolf, already the largest giant in the world, ate the Deka Deka fruit and could grow 10 times larger. Then Kuzan had appeared, Admiral Aokiji, Garp's former student. He was now wearing Blackbeard's Jolly Roger as the 10th Titanic captain of his crew. The return of Kuzan came with a flashback. 1 year after losing to Sakazuki at Punk Hazard, Kuzan had quit the Marines Marines. Blackbeard found him in a bar and recruited him, not through force or manipulation, but through a single question: what do you want to do now? Kuzan's answer led him to join the Blackbeard pirates, trading marine justice for pirate freedom. Now, we see student and teacher facing off against each other. Kuzan tried freezing Garp with Ice Ball, but Garp shattered the ice and punched Kuzan through the ground with Blue Hole. They traded blows infused with Haki, each attack echoing with decades of shared history. Kuzan remembered their training sessions, punching battleships side by side, Garp slowly opening up about his family troubles, watching Kuzan rise to admiral status while Garp deliberately remained as a vice admiral. The entire point of this battle was to buy time for Kobe and the others to escape. Garp fought multiple commanders at the same time, defeating San Juan Wolf with a single punch, and he launched the massive giant into the ocean, but numbers and injuries started to add up. Shiryu, with his invisibility fruit, had struck a sword through Garp's stomach. The hero of the Marines staggered but didn't fall. He grabbed Shiryu's face and slammed him into the ground hard enough to crater the stone. Pizarro then made his move. Using his island powers, he formed a massive arm from Hachinozu itself and prepared to crush the escaping marine ship. Kobe panicked, and there was no way to stop an attack that size, but Garp had a plan. He told Kobe to destroy the arm. Kobe, confused, asked how he was supposed to do that without explosives. Garp simply said, "Live up to my expectations." Garp charged at Kuzan one final time, hitting him with a Haki-infused punch that sent him flying. Then Garp leaped to the massive stone formation Pizarro had created and struck it with Galaxy Divide. The attack was so powerful that it damaged Pizarro's real body through his connection to the island, stunning him completely. This was Kobe's signal. He launched himself at the stone hand and unleashed Honesty Impact, his own version of Garp's technique. The attack obliterated the entire stone arm, shattering it to rubble and severely injuring Pizarro. Pirates and Marines alike watched in awe as Kobe, the boy who started out as a coward at the beginning of the story, demonstrated power that would have made Garp truly proud. But Garp wasn't coming with them, unfortunately. He ended up being surrounded by Blackbeard's officers as he was wounded critically by Shiryu. Garp told his students to escape without him, as Kuzan froze him partially with an ice spear, mirroring what had happened to Jaguar D Sol decades ago. Garp's final words to the young Marines were simple: "You are the future of the Marines." The next day's newspapers reported two major incidents: the safe return of Kobe and the mysterious disappearance of Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp at Hachinozu. Officially, Garp was missing in action. Realistically though, the hero of the Marines had been captured, or worse, he was killed by the crew of Blackbeard. The implications were staggering. Marines across the world questioned all of their orders. If even Garp, the man who'd captured Roger, who defeated Rox at God Valley, who represented everything good about the Marines, could be abandoned by the system, then what did that say about marine justice? Seeds of doubt had started to spread through the ranks, foreshadowing a fracture in the Marine organization that would only grow larger. This now brings us to the island 500 years in the future. The Straw Hats arrived at Egghead fresh off of learning about the world's chaos. They had also rescued Jewelry Bonnie from drowning, a girl who could manipulate her age, appearing as a child one moment and then an adult the next. Then the Straw Hats ship got eaten by a mechanical shark, because apparently even sea monsters have been upgraded in Egghead to science fiction standards. Egghead was sci-fi brought to life. Holographic displays filled the air, vending machines dispensed complete meals, hover boots let people glide effortlessly. The entire island screamed the future, and at its center floated the Labo Phase, an artificial sky island held afloat by cloud technology, housing a massive egg-shaped structure containing Vegapunk's laboratory. Then had come the twist that redefined what we thought we knew about Vegapunk. The young girl piloting the mech that had rescued them, that was Vegapunk. The massive violent man who tried fighting them was also Vegapunk, and the samurai robot, the punk rocker, the greedy glutton, all were Vegapunk. Because Vegapunk ate the brain fruit, his brain grew infinitely until it became so massive that he had to remove it and store it in Punk records. The giant egg building. But here's the genius part. Vegapunk found a way to split his consciousness into 6 separate bodies, which he refers to as satellites. Each represents a different aspect of Vegapunk's personality. Shaka was good. She was calm, logical, and always seeking peaceful solutions. Lilith was the embodiment of evil. She was mischievous, violent, and focused on profit and combat. Edison represented thought. He was the inventor, constantly creating new technology. Pythagoras symbolized wisdom. He was analytical and mathematical. Atlas channeled violence, aggressive and protective. And lastly, York, well, York was greed. A satellite that was obsessed with eating, sleeping, and their own desires. Each satellite could sync their memories with Stella, the original Vegapunk, and with Punk Records. They operated as parts of a whole, collaborative genius taken to its logical extreme. Except York had wanted more than just being part of a collective. York wanted everything. 3 months before the Straw Hats arrived, York contacted the Gorosei secretly, revealing to them Vegapunk's greatest crime, that he'd been researching the Void Century, the world government's ultimate taboo. This is the one thing guaranteed to earn somebody a death sentence. Why on earth would York betray her creator? Well, because the Gorosei promised her something impossible, that they'd make her a celestial dragon. York could live in luxury at Mary Geoise, eating endlessly, sleeping whenever she wanted, and with slaves attending to her every whim. All she had to do was eliminate the other satellites and Stella, keeping herself alive as the sole Vegapunk to continue producing weapons for the government. York's plan was elaborate. She had used the Seraphim, the new pacifista model, combining warlord genetics with Lunarian DNA in order to kill everyone. She'd fake her own petrification using S-Snake's Mero fruit abilities, making it appear that she was a victim instead of being a traitor. She'd even captured CP0 agents over several months, keeping them as hostages in the lab's basement to use as leverage. But there was a problem York didn't anticipate: the Straw Hats showing up and changing everything that she had planned. CP0 infiltrated Egghead first. This included Lucci, Kaku, and Stussy arriving to assess the situation before the government's main forces. Their orders were clear: to kill Vegapunk and all 6 satellites, and to ensure that there were no survivors. Sentomaru, Vegapunk's bodyguard and adopted son, immediately deployed the Sea Beast weapons and Pacifista Mark III units to defend the island. These weren't the original Pacifistas. These were upgraded versions with bubble shields, enhanced lasers, and coordinated tactics. 50 Mark III units mobilized to protect Vegapunk and help the Straw Hats escape. But Kizaru arrived with 9 vice admirals and an entire marine fleet. The admiral moved at light speed, phasing through the Frontier Dome, Egghead's defensive barrier, and he entered the Labo phase directly. His target was Sentomaru. Despite their history, Kizaru had known Sentomaru since he was a child, and had watched him grow up alongside Vegapunk. The admiral struck him down without hesitation. Sentomaru fell and his control over the Pacifista command structure was severed. Luffy confronted Kizaru in Gear 5, transforming the battlefield into cartoonish chaos. Reality warped around them as Luffy's rubber body defied physics. He stretched the ground itself, grabbed lightning from the air, and fought with the freedom and joy that Gear 5 embodies. But Kizaru matched him move for move, creating light clones and dodging attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. Chaos erupts within the Labo phase. Lucci fought Zoro in what became the longest continuous fight in the story arc. The two clashed for literal months worth of chapter releases. Lucci had awakened his leopard Zoan, gaining the characteristic Cloud Flame aura and enhanced abilities. But Zoro, fresh off of defeating King, wasn't intimidated. Sanji worked to evacuate Vegapunk and Bonnie while defending them from Seraphim attacks. The Seraphim proved why they were considered the ultimate weapon. S-Hawk wielded Daz Bones' Dice Fruit through green blood technology. S-Shark had Senior Pink's Swim Fruit, S-Bear possessed Kuma's Paw abilities, and S-Snake combined Hancock's Mero Fruit with her natural cuteness to devastating effect. Even battle-hardened pirates fell for her innocent act. Then had come one of the key moments of the story arc, Stussy's betrayal. While Kaku celebrated the chaos, Stussy approached him from behind and bit his neck, egg. She drained his blood while using hidden sea stone to weaken him. Before anyone could react, she subdued Lucci the same way, revealing her true allegiance. Stussy was a clone. Specifically, she was the first successful clone ever created, a copy of Buckingham Stussy, who had been part of the Rocks Pirates and later a member of Mads alongside Vegapunk, Judge, Queen and Caesar. The original Stussy had worked with Mads decades ago, and Vegapunk had cloned her as an experiment in creating artificial humans. But unlike York, who was created to be a part of a collective, Stussy had been treated as property. Only Vegapunk treated her like an actual person, with thoughts and feelings that mattered. That kindness earned absolute loyalty. For over 20 years, Stussy had worked undercover as a CP0 agent, secretly reporting to Vegapunk and protecting his interests from within the world government itself. Her transformation was shocking. Bat wings emerged from her back, revealing that she'd somehow gained devil fruit abilities, whether through eating a fruit or through some unknown Zoan lineage. Stussy demonstrated these vampiric powers. The reveal about Miss Buckingham Stussy being a part of the Rocks Pirates also confirmed something that fans had theorized. Edward Weevil, who claimed to be Whitebeard's son, might actually be a clone. Miss Buckingham Stussy had said that Vegapunk could prove Weevil's relation to Whitebeard, likely because Vegapunk created Weevil using Whitebeard's genetic material in a similar way that he'd created the Seraphim. Speaking of Weevil, while defending Whitebeard's hometown of Sphinx from Marines who were trying to steal Whitebeard's treasure, Weevil had been captured by Admiral Ryokugyu, and the timeline suggested that this happened around the same time as the Egghead incident, effectively removing another potential player from the board. While battles were raging throughout Egghead, Bonnie discovered something that would break her. It was a paw-shaped bubble containing her father's complete memories. Vegapunk had theorized that Kuma's pawpaw fruit could repel anything, including intangible things like pain and memories. He'd asked Kuma to try extracting his memories as an experiment. Kuma had persistently refused, as some things were too painful to revisit, but before his final transformation, Kuma created the memory bubble anyway, leaving it for Bonnie to find if she ever were to come to Egghead. Bonnie dove into the memories and experienced her father's entire life from his perspective. The following flashback became the most emotionally devastating sequence in the history of One Piece. Bartholomew Kuma, who was born 47 years ago in the Sorbet Kingdom to parents who were slaves at Mary Geoise, his only crime in life was having the blood of a near-extinct race that the world government had been systematically genociding for 800 years because of something that their ancestors did during the Void Century. This, of course, was a buccaneer blood. At the age of 4, Kuma was enslaved along with his parents. His mother died from exhaustion. His father was shot dead in front of him, but before dying, Kuma's father told him about Nika, the warrior of liberation who would one day free all slaves and make people smile. That legend kept Kuma alive through the nightmare. 38 years ago, during the God Valley incident, 9-year-old Kuma met Ivankov and Ginny while all three were being hunted by celestial dragons for sport. The native hunting competition turned into chaos when the Rocks Pirates and Roger Pirates had crashed the island. Kuma ate the pawpaw fruit during the violence and used its power to save over 500 people, teleporting them to safety. Among those who were saved were Ginny, who would become the love of his life, and Marshall D. Teach, infant Blackbeard, along with his mother, who Kuma rescued without knowing that the child would grow into a Yonko. Years later, Kuma and Ginny became co-commanders of the Revolutionary Army's Eastern Forces. They fought together, dreamed together, and Kuma had something resembling happiness for the first time since his childhood. But tragedy struck when Ginny was one day kidnapped by a celestial dragon. The world government ended up experimenting on her. They deliberately infected her with sapphire scales, a disease causing the victim's skin to turn to stone when exposed to natural sunlight. We learned that this was a project done by Saint Saturn. He was testing methods to create artificial devil fruit powers by infecting people with extracts. Ginny ended up becoming a failed experiment, and she was discarded once the disease took hold of her. She escaped while pregnant and returned to the Sorbet Kingdom, where she gave birth to Bonnie before the disease killed her. Kuma raised his adoptive daughter alone, watching in horror as Bonnie developed the same disease that claimed her mother. Kuma searched desperately for a cure. He visited island after island, asked everyone that he met if they had known any way to save his daughter. The places he visited during this search became the exact locations that he would later send the Straw Hats for their 2-year training. Kuma could only use his devil fruit to send people to places that he'd personally been to. Nobody had a cure for him until Vegapunk made an offer stating, "Let me study your buccaneer blood to create the Pacifista project, and in return I'll cure your daughter." Kuma agreed instantly, but Saturn wasn't satisfied with just Kuma's genetics. The Gorosei intervened with 3 additional conditions. First, Kuma would join the 7 warlords, filling the position left vacant after Podcast D-Ace defeated Hanafuda, a previous member. Second, Kuma would allow his body to be augmented with cybernetic weapons, transforming him into a living weapon for the Marines. And the third and final condition, which was the cruelest of them all, Kuma would surrender his free will. His memories, his entire personality, everything that made Kuma himself would be erased, leaving behind a mindless robot that obeyed government orders absolutely. Vegapunk tried desperately to negotiate. He begged Saturn to reconsider, to find another way, but Kuma had already made his choice. Saving Bonnie was worth more than his own humanity. He agreed to all 3 conditions. Over the next 2 years, piece by piece, Kuma was transformed. His body became cybernetic, weapons were installed, his ability to feel emotions slowly disappeared, and during this gradual death, Kuma wrote letter after letter to Bonnie, trying to fill them with enough love to last her an entire lifetime. Unfortunately, CP0 intercepted every single letter. Not one reached Bonnie. She grew up believing that her father had abandoned her, never knowing that he was screaming silently for her from inside a machine that he could no longer control. We know that Bonnie wasn't actually Kuma's biological daughter. She was 10 years old, not the young adult that she appeared to be. Her devil fruit, the HH fruit, let her manipulate her own age. Saturn had given her this power as another experiment, infecting her with a devil fruit extract while she was a child. Bonnie's disease wasn't natural. Saturn created it. He infected Ginny deliberately, knowing that it would be passed on to any child that she had. Then he used that disease as leverage to control Kuma. Every tragedy in their lives traced back to Saint Saturn. He was responsible for Ginny's death, for Bonnie's disease, for Kuma's transformation, for the letters that never arrived. Saturn had orchestrated every moment of their suffering across nearly 2 decades. Before Vegapunk removed his will completely, Kuma made 2 final requests. First, program him to protect the Thousand Sunny after Marineford until one of the Straw Hats returned. Kuma had seen Luffy punch a celestial dragon to protect a friend. He'd witnessed this young pirate embody everything Nika represented in the legends that his father told him. Kuma believed with absolute certainty that Luffy would one day change the world. And second, if Vegapunk ever saw Bonnie again, to wish her a happy 10th birthday. Then Vegapunk pulled the switch and Kuma died, and in his place stood a emotionless machine that would follow orders until it broke down completely. Bonnie emerged from the memory bubble sobbing. She watched her father sacrifice everything to save her life. She'd seen the truth about Saturn's manipulation, and she'd learned that Vegapunk wasn't the monster she thought. He was the only person who tried to save her father from the fate that the government forced upon him. While Bonnie processed her father's memories, York's betrayal reached its climax. For months she'd been the perfect traitor. CP0 agents who investigated Egghead disappeared into the lab's basement, captured and held hostage. York used S-Snake to turn herself to stone in front of the others, making it appear that she was a victim. Then S-Snake secretly restored her when they were separated, allowing York to move freely while everyone thought that she was petrified. York had commanded the Seraphim through their authority hierarchy to kill everyone except for herself, Stella, and the CP0 hostages. She needed Stella alive temporarily to extract critical information, and the hostages as leverage if negotiations went wrong. Shaka discovered the truth first. While investigating, someone shot him in the head, destroying his helmet. That someone was York. Pythagoras was killed next when she triggered an explosion in his section of the lab. When the Straw Hats finally cornered York, she confessed to everything. Her goal was simple: become the only Vegapunk, serve the world government exclusively, and ascend to Celestial Dragon status. She knew that the Elders would kill all the satellites, not just Stella, so she decided to eliminate the competition first. But York made a critical miscalculation. Admiral Kizaru arrived with Saint Saint Geoise Saturn, one of the Gorosei physically descending from Mary Geoise. This was unprecedented. For over 2 centuries, the elders have never left the Holy Land. Their presence on Egghead signaled how seriously the government took Vegapunk's knowledge. Saturn materialized through a demonic summoning circle, revealing his true form. It's a grotesque hybrid of a human spider and ox called a Gyuki from Japanese mythology. His mere presence paralyzed everyone who looked at him. Marines who accidentally met his gaze had their heads explode telekinetically. His wounds regenerated instantly, making him functionally immortal. Bonnie, who was consumed by rage after learning Saturn orchestrated every tragedy in her life, she stabbed him with a sword. Saturn casually pulled it out as the wound had healed instantly. He explained with chilling detachment that he viewed humans as insects, beneath notice, beneath empathy, and useful only as experimental subjects. Saturn ordered Bonnie's execution by firing squad, and as she prepared to die, her father came home. Kuma, who should have been shut down completely after his self-destruct mechanism activated, somehow he crossed the red line from the Revolutionary Army headquarters. He powered through an entire marine fleet. He arrived at Egghead just in time to shield his daughter from Saturn's attack. He punched the Elder so hard that he flew across the island. For one impossible moment, the man who destroyed his life stood face to face with the father who'd overcome death itself through sheer parental love. But Saturn wasn't enough, as Vegapunk's pre-recorded broadcast began transmitting worldwide. The other 4 elders then decided that they couldn't risk failure. Saturn summoned them through demonic circles. Saint Marcus Mars manifested as the Itsumade, a colossal bird yokai with a serpent's tail, capable of flight and fire attacks. Saint Topman Walkyrie transformed into the Fengji, an apocalyptic boar with blade-like tusks that generated flames. Saint Ethambaron V. Nusjuro became the Bakotsu, a skeletal horse wielding the Shodai Kitetsu, one of the 12 supreme grade swords, capable of generating ice through death's chill. Saint Jupiter took the form of a sandworm, titanic enough to burrow through earth and swallow battleships whole. These 5 beings who'd ruled the world for 800 years were 5 immortal demons with regeneration that made them unkillable. All physically were present on Egghead at the same time. They were not there to fight the Straw Hats, they were there to stop Vegapunk's message, and they were failing. This was because 2 weeks before the government mobilized, Vegapunk, Shaka, and Pythagoras figured out that York was the traitor. They'd known that she'd stolen a fragment of the Mother Flame. They knew that the government had used its power Uranus and had destroyed Lelusia, and they knew exactly what the elders would do next, so they prepared to counterstrike. Vegapunk recorded a message explaining everything that he'd learned about the Void Century. He programmed it to broadcast worldwide upon his death. He hid the transmission Dendenmushi inside the Iron Giant's body where York would never think to look. Then he, Shaka, and Pythagoras erased their own memories of the plan, leaving only enough context to act naturally when York betrayed them. Vegapunk willingly walked into his assassination, turning his death into a dead man's switch that would expose 800 years worth of lies. When Kizaru fatally wounded Stella, the broadcast activated. Every Dendenmushi worldwide suddenly received Vegapunk's voice. Marine bases, pirate ships, revolutionary hideouts, civilian homes. The entire planet heard the world's smartest man speak his final words. Vegapunk apologized for interrupting them, as he admitted he'd committed crimes that the government considered worthy of execution. Then he made the most audacious claim in the history of One Piece. The world was sinking into the ocean, and it had already begun. He explained that his prediction of a 1-meter sea level rise had just been confirmed. And this wasn't due to a natural disaster, it was because of an ancient weapon that was used for the first time after 800 years of dormancy. The world as people know it, thousands of separate islands, wasn't how the planet had originally looked. During the Void Century, sea levels rose by over 200 meters. Entire continents drowned. Only mountain peaks now remain above water. Every island in the current world was once part of larger landmasses before the ocean swallowed them, and currently Fishman Island being 10,000 meters underwater while it used to be at sea level. The 5 elders desperately fought to stop the broadcast. Mars tore through the labo phase, searching for the Dendenmushi that was broadcasting this message. Walkyrie charged at the Iron Giant housing the transmitter, but Vegapunk's message continued. He revealed Joy Boy, the first pirate who was born 900 years ago in an advanced kingdom, who fought with a rubbery body like the sun god Nika from legend. Joy Boy was the original user of the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika, Luffy's devil fruit, the fruit the government had been trying to capture for 800 years because they feared its awakening. Vegapunk confirmed a great war occurred between Joy Boy's faction and an alliance of 20 kingdoms that eventually became the world government. He couldn't say who started the conflict or which side was right, only that two ideologies clashed, and one of them used an ancient weapon to sink the world underwater. He also revealed that Goldie Roger and his crew knew everything. The Roger pirates discovered the complete truth at Laugh Tale but chose not to reveal it, saying that they were too early. The Will of D, people being systematically hunted by the government, were descendants of Joy Boy's faction from the Lost Kingdom. Races like the Buccaneers faced extinction specifically because their ancestors fought alongside Joy Boy. The government had spent 800 years erasing bloodlines that were connected to the ancient kingdom, ensuring that the truth died with them. In the final moments before the elders destroyed the transmitter, Vegapunk proclaimed the fate of the entire world will be decided by whoever found the One Piece. The impact was instantaneous and irreversible. Pirates erupted with renewed ambition. The Marines questioned their orders. Revolutionaries gained recruitment ammunition. Citizens realized that government had been lying for their entire existence. The world government couldn't suppress it, they couldn't spin this, and they were not able to erase what Vegapunk had done. But the transmission cut off before Vegapunk could reveal one critical detail, something specific about people with the initial D in their names. The elders managed to disrupt it briefly, silencing whatever message Vegapunk had prepared specifically for the D clan. Throughout the siege, Luffy's Gear 5 transformation remained absolutely critical. After awakening during the Kaido fight, Luffy had full access to the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika. His rubber body became cartoonishly elastic. He could stretch the environment itself, turn buildings into rubber, grab lightning from the sky, fighting with reality warping physics that made battles feel like Looney Tunes, and Egghead revealed something crucial about Gear 5. It wasn't just a power-up, it was freedom incarnate. The transformation embodied liberation so completely that others could physically feel it. Bonnie, who'd spent her entire life believing Nika was just a fairy tale that her father had told her about, heard Luffy's heartbeat and recognized the drums of liberation. The same rhythm Kuma had talked about, the same legend passed down through generations of slaves. It was real, Nika was real, and he was fighting alongside them right now. This realization unlocked something within Bonnie during her distortion future ability, which let her transform into any future that she could imagine. Bonnie pictured a future where she was the most free. Her body then morphed into a Nika-like form. She had white hair, flame-like aura, rubber properties. It was cosmetic compared to Luffy's actual awakening, but it was symbolically perfect. Bonnie stopped waiting for heroes to save her, and she became her own liberator. The Iron Giant Emmett awakened to the drums too. Built 900 years ago, Emmett had climbed the Red Line 200 years ago, attempting to attack Mary Jo. He'd stopped working before reaching his target, and scientists preserved him without understanding his ancient power source. Emmett had been silent for 2 centuries, until he heard the drums of liberation again. Luffy's presence triggered memories of Joy Boy himself, the original Nika user who'd befriended the robot long ago. Joy Boy had entrusted Emmett with a secret weapon, a knot tied within his body containing concentrated Supreme King's Haki, 800 years of Conqueror's Haki, preserved specifically for the moment when Nika returned. When the 5 elders prepared their final assault, Emmett unleashed it. The Haki blast knocked out every marine on Egghead. It forced all 5 elders out of their awakened forms simultaneously and banished them back to Mary Jo. Even Imu, sitting on the empty throne thousands of miles away, sensed the Haki and recognized it instantly. This was Joy Boy's will echoing across 8 centuries, and it had just saved Luffy's life. The Straw Hats escaped Egghead Island with the giant warrior pirates as they began sailing towards Elbaf. Bonnie had joined them, and Kuma's body was finally giving out after one last miracle. Lilith was also with the Straw Hats, the sole surviving satellite who carried Punk Records as Edison transformed it into a sky island using cloud technology. But Egghead Egghead paid a price. Atlas sacrificed herself to protect the escaping ship from Nusjiro's attack. Edison, Shaka, and Pythagoras died during York's betrayal. Centauro barely escaped with his life. The Cypherpole hostages, who'd been captured for months, were freed during the chaos, and Stella, the original Vegapunk, was dead. Yet Vegapunk's legacy survived. His consciousness, his accumulated knowledge, his life's work, all of it remained intact within Punk records. The 4 deceased satellites merged their remaining data into a composite body with Edison leading. Stella died, but Vegapunk endured. York secured her position within the world government by keeping the Mother Flame production capability intact. The Elders promoted her to Celestial Dragon status as promised. She had betrayed humanity for personal advancement, and it worked. The government could now manufacture unlimited fuel for Uranus, giving them the power to sink any island that opposed them. As for Saturn, Imu killed him remotely, the same way that he'd executed Cobra. Saturn's body shriveled as his immortality was revoked. This was punishment for failing to stop Vegapunk's broadcast and allowing Luffy to escape. Vegaland Garling, leader of the God Knights and the man who organized the God Valley massacre, became the new warrior god of science and defense. This represented the government openly acknowledging that old methods were failing. They needed someone more ruthless, more brutal, more willing to commit atrocities, and this was Garling, Shanks' biological father, who was the perfect fit. Vegapunk's broadcast altered the planet's political landscape. Revolutionary bases worldwide overflowed with new recruits. People finally understood why their ancestors fought against the world government, why certain bloodlines were hunted, why kingdoms mysteriously vanished from maps. Dragon recognized what Vegapunk's message meant. The coming conflict over habitable land would make existing wars look like border skirmishes. As the world continued sinking, nations would battle over shrinking territory. The ancient weapons were not relics, they were the key to surviving in a drowning world. Blackbeard had also made his move. Karibo, who had been eavesdropping on conversations about ancient weapons since Fishman Island, approached the Blackbeard pirates with an offer. It was information about Pluton and Poseidon's locations in exchange for joining the crew. Teach already had Pudding captured for ability to read poneglyphs. Combined with potentially knowing the final road poneglyph's location, Blackbeard positioned himself to reach Laugh-Tale before anyone expected. Marines questioned everything. If Vegapunk, the man who'd created their ultimate weapons, said the government had been lying, then what else was false? How many other kingdoms like Lelusia had been erased? Were they really serving justice or just enforcing tyranny? Pirates intensified their searches for Laugh-Tale, understanding Roger's treasure held answers that Vegapunk couldn't provide. The race to the One Piece accelerated, with every major faction mobilizing. The Gorosei understood that their worst fear had materialized, as the world was becoming aware of Luffy being Nika. The legendary figure who opposed them 800 years ago has returned in the body of a rubber boy who punched anyone restricting freedom. We're all not ready for what's coming, as the Elbaf arc will reveal the Giants' role in the ancient conflict and why Imu specifically fears them enough to try manipulating them for centuries. We are going to inevitably reach Laugh-Tale, where the complete truths wait alongside the One Piece itself, where Roger and his crew laughed at what they found, where Joy Boy left his final message, where the answer to what happened 800 years ago and how to prevent the world from drowning again will finally be revealed. But none of this happens without the Egghead Island Arc, without the sacrifice of Vegapunk, without Kuma's love giving him strength to defy death, and without Bonnie learning to become her own hero. We are well and truly into the final saga of One Piece, but for now we've reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What did you guys think about my complete Egghead Island Arc retrospective? If there's anything that I've forgotten to mention, then let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thanks for making it to the end of this one, and I look forward to seeing you all in my next One Piece video.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.